Welcome in, Warchant Game Day. It is game day. How about that on a Friday? It's the third hour of the Jeff Cameron Show. It is Warchant Game Day for the rest of everybody else. And for our purposes, we will talk Florida State and NC State. Can it be, Tommy Lang, that the elusive road victory is ours tonight? Carter Finley Stadium in Raleigh. A real house of horrors. Let me give you some numbers as we start the proceedings here. Both teams, we know this, are looking to become bowl eligible. So you got something to play for, I suppose. FSU, obviously having just won 34-14, looked good in their last football game for the most part. NC State, on the other hand, was atrocious and got blown out 41-7. We're 5-5, 2-5 in the ACC. We've lost 5 of 7 games. We're 0-3 just this year on the road this season. The Wolfpack are 5-5, 2-4 in the ACC. They've dropped 3 of 4, but are 4-1 on their home field this year. FSU leads the all-time series, 27 wins, 16 losses to NC State. Ought not happen, kids, but it does a lot. NC State, Tommy, has won 5 of the last 6 games played between these two teams. You think about that for a second. That is criminal. 5 of 6. Good God, man. Let it all in tonight with a win.
Well, these 16 losses, most of them have occurred when I was in high school and beyond. I remember the first one, you're losing to Amato. And then when I was in college, lots of losses to NC State, and subsequent years, lots of losses to NC State. Yeah, this is not a program that brings the warm and fuzzies out for people of my age, or any Nole really, but specifically people who are in their 30s. They've seen a lot of losing to NC State. You could go get the job done. You could go get that road win tonight and get off that 2-year schneid. We're looking at 720 some odd days since we last won a road game. But I fully expect that their quarterback is going to play well. And I think that team, it's no fluke that the record at home is the record at home. You'll see a different group than the one that played against Miami. We could get into the nuts and bolts of how that Miami loss happened. But one of the key things that I saw in watching that game start to finish was that if you thought Dave Canales, as the Buccaneers offensive coordinator, was predictable on first down, well, you ain't seen nothing yet. That NC State game plan on first down against Miami put them consistently behind the chains, and Bailey had no chance at that point. But you got a good quarterback if you're NC State, a guy who can get the ball down the field. It's going to be an interesting one to see if NC State is checked in. I just wonder, given the way the betting line has trended this week, if there are whispers about guys sitting out, or if there's a flu bug running through the NC State locker room, or if the locker room morale is low. That line does not make sense to me. I know what just happened on the road at Miami, but that 6.5 line does not make sense to me whatsoever.
Yes, I think really it's been influenced by 2 things specifically. Florida State got done winning in big fashion, blowout fashion. NC State themselves just got blown out. Marry those 2, and the public is all over Florida State. Florida State's a very public team anyhow. And then I think the other part of it is the Dave Doeren rumors. And there's a rumor originally at the beginning of this year that he was going to retire. He's been there since 2013. I would argue that Dave Doeren, who I used to roll my eyes at, has done a good job at NC State. He really has. The problem for Dave is I do agree with people when they say it's getting a little stale. They may have peaked. The run is probably over. A new set of eyes. When any coach has been anywhere for more than 10 years, I think oftentimes you can make the argument that it's time to move on. And they went 5-7 last year, 6-7, whatever they did last year. There was a sub 500 record, and they're fighting for bowl eligibility right now, obviously. So we'll see how this season ends up for them. But it may very well be back-to-back losing seasons for him. And you could understand where people would want to move on. And maybe there is that talk swirling around the program. We don't cover NC State, and we're not in Raleigh. But I can understand where people would be growing tired of it. He's not a warm, fuzzy guy. I mean, he's not easy to handle with the press, and he's not – I mean, knives are probably out there at this point. If they got a chance to take a shot at him, they're going to do it. So, yeah, there could be noise in the system for NC State.
The other thing you have to point to here is their big game Their magnum opus for their home slate this season is not Florida State. It was a top 10 Georgia Tech team. That's where they got their win. And that game mattered more than this game does. And that speaks to how far we've fallen at Florida State. But there is no doubt that while many a road trip we've made up there as a football program has been the hottest ticket for an NC State fan to get and to watch, that's not the case this year. They scored their massive upset. So maybe they don't have the same razor-sharp intensity for Florida State that they did for Georgia Tech. But they did look sharp when they took out Georgia Tech, especially on offense. Bailey was a monster. And so much so, watching him a bunch this week, I like him as a mid-round flyer pick in the NFL. I love the size at 6'6". He has all the throws. There are some habits that you'd have to clean up. I'm not saying he's a first-round talent, but in watching C.J. Bailey throw for throw, drop back for drop back, he's a nice player, man. And if he decides to play tonight, I don't see any indications that he didn't care or he shut it down against Miami either last week. But if he plays well tonight, yeah, you've got a handful of issues defensively.
Every quarterback that has a pulse and can hit the broadside of a barn has played well against us. I mean, if you can stand upright and read a defense, you're going to have success throwing the football against us. Now, if you think about it, not great quarterback play at Wake Forest, not great quarterback play at Virginia Tech. So you got back-to-back big wins there where you had the opportunity to kind of dominate games once you got out in front because the teams weren't equipped to throw the ball. That's not what they do. He can throw it. He can spin it. I would suggest getting out in front because you got a confidence issue, or so it seems, on the road. But also I think you're going to have to weather the storm because they'll let him sling it. And I don't think you'll get the same Bailey that you got a week ago. I think he put all kinds of pressure on himself going down to Miami, going home. I think he desperately wanted to show out and pull the upset and impress friends and family in attendance, the whole thing. And it spiraled on him. And I just think he kind of obviously cratered a little bit there.
He did. Also, Jacoby Thomas for Miami makes two incredible plays. One, he's guessing on the wheel that the throws to the wheel and not the over. He had responsibility for deep. He cheats, but he guessed right, and that's how he gets to the pick six. And then the second one, I have to say, I think he intentionally hid behind the umpire because if they actually showed it, an awesome low angle replay, the little spider cam got low. He's right behind the umpire the whole way. So CJ is bailing out as he throws. That's his one bad habit, is if you can pressure him, he will throw off his back foot. It ain't as bad as pogo stick body language and mechanics from Tommy, but it ain't great either. And he threw late across the middle. I think Thomas successfully hit himself. And by the time you have those two turnovers and a couple empty possessions because of predictable play calling on first down, the game's over and you're totally chasing. Like, I don't think he completely cratered the way the stats would show. And I do know that when he's at his best, I'm putting him up there against any quarterback that Florida State has faced this year. The best of C.J. Bailey is actually quite good. I think it's more consistent and better than what Cade Klubnik has shown this year. He's completing about 70% of his passes. He also has that trait that we love, which is when he breaks the pocket, he will run. But when he breaks the pocket, his eyes are down the field, and he'll run as a second or a third option. But if he can beat you down the field, he certainly will, and he's got the arm talent to do it. And pretty good moves for somebody who's 6'6". But it all is presupposing that NC State is going to be locked in tonight, and this is just a theme that is far too prevalent in college football, not just Florida State games, but across college football for teams that have 4 and 5 losses on their docket. Are they going to try this given week? We've seen it with Florida, NC State, Wake Forest, Virginia Tech, us, to name just a handful. But there's a lot of teams out there week to week that you just can't assume that they're going to show up and play. The setting, the prime time, NC State probably is going to play a lot differently than they did against Miami, but we'll see.
Game sets up to be a high-scoring affair when you just look at the numbers in the matchup. The total is 59.5 this week. It's interesting to me, though, Tom. I am shading a little bit towards the under here. Florida State has played to the under in 4 of their last 5 games, and the defense has played better. So it's interesting. Now, I don't love this matchup for them. So, I've shaded to the under most of the week because that's such a big total. And yet I can very easily convince myself not to do that because of what you just said about Bailey, which I would echo. He's fun to watch when you go back and look at his games. He's a good player. When he's in a rhythm, he's a very good player. And it's incumbent upon Tony White's defense here to get to him. And let's see if we can't get him rattled and maybe we get that spiraling effect again. But I have my doubts.
The way that he will drop his eyes and rat trap is if the pressure is internal. It's between the tackles. That's where you will see him drop, and his shoulders, he'll try to make a move, and he's not looking down the field. But if he gets out on the run, if he can break a contain because you lose your edge, then it's lights out. And also if he's got a clean pocket, that arm is a cannon. He scans down the field. I look at some of the throws he makes, and I say to myself, boy, if you just implanted him here, I think we're playing in Charlotte for the ACC championship, because that is the one thing that we are missing offensively, and he could carry the day for you. So what Tony needs to do, I know Lee Sterling talked about it in hour one when he came on. He said, I think you can confuse him pressure-wise with the linebacker level. I don't see that as much as I see with the safeties, but it all is about pressure up the middle. And this is where Florida State's been a little bit better in that regard, but you're going to have pressure, I think, between the tackles to affect him as a passer. The other thing is they've got a really physical running back too. Thankfully for Florida State, they've been okay against that particular facet of offenses. Virginia Tech last week, I know, ran for well over 200 yards. I get that. Watching the game, it didn't feel like we were getting gashed up and down the field on the ground. I thought Virginia Tech got hot in certain moments. But usually when you give up around 240 yards of rushing, you walk away from that game going, God, we were ass against the run. I didn't feel that way watching the game. I don't know if you did. I don't worry about that as much as I worry about the quarterback.
Yeah, no, I worry about the quarterback much more. I don't look too much. Virginia Tech is going to hammer the run. The numbers are going to be skewed. It's like Florida State's numbers are skewed because of the way Gus Malzahn runs offenses. You can convince yourself just staring at numbers that Florida State is an elite offensive team. They're not at all. And this is why we have these conversations. I remember a week ago, somebody chiming in the chat about where we ranked offensively. And I'm like, well, first of all, if you take East Texas A&M and Kent State off the ledger, those numbers change dramatically. Something about amassing over 700 yards of offense in a game forever skews the rest of the statistics for the year. But also I would point out, as you have in conference play, just look at the games in conference. And this is a bad league. This is a bad year for a bad league. The ACC is not any good at all this year. And we still, if you looked at those numbers, you'd see they're decisively different than what the national ranking numbers are for Florida State. So anyhow, I think that sometimes you look at a team and you see certain things, even in a singular game like Virginia Tech or a season, and you can be led astray solely by those numbers. You have to watch teams play. Like, Georgia's offense is ranked below Florida State's offense. Whose offense would you want on the road?
Well, this is why the number is potentially high, and a lot of those picks have been high. So if you take a look at Florida State's offense overall this season, I'm going top line of top line stats, the basic of the basic, 36.4 points a game, which is second in the conference, only behind Pitt. Pitt, who's averaging 37.2 in all their games played. We'll switch it to conference games only. So in ACC play, it drops from 36.4 down to 27.1, which puts Florida State 10th.
Yes,
in the ACC.
it's a significant drop-off.
Now, you look to the other side, because you could say, all right, well, what about NC State defensively? Overall, if you look at the season, NC State defensively is 16th out of 17 ACC teams, averaging 31.6 points per game. Again, top-line stats. These are super simple, but they're easy ones. Add in the ACC games, remove the other ones as conference only, they're still 16th. They're giving up 37 points a game. This is a bad defense, man. So even though we look at Florida State's offense, I think more honestly, and you say, it's fine, it isn't a world beater of an offense, you have an opportunity to be a world beater tonight on the road at NC State. You've got a real shot at it. I know that they give up a bunch against the pass, but I think there's a lot of opportunities to be able to run the ball on NC State as well. Many teams have.
Well, and I think what's interesting for Florida State, you are seeing a bit of a trend here. Some of it's good, some of it's bad. I was looking at advanced numbers in preparation for this. Florida State generates a quality drive on over 54% of its possessions and scores the 25th most points per drive in the country. That's impressive. You like hearing that. It's fun. The problem is, and continues to be, close game mismanagement. Norvell is 0-4. FSU is 0-4 in one-score games this year, 4-11 outright against ranked teams under Norvell. What you see from Florida State is when you're controlling the game on the ground and you can keep your offense on the field and put together these drives, you wear people down and you end up running away from them. When the game is close and teams don't have to come out of what they want to do, you typically make the kind of mistakes that cost teams games. You'll mismanage a situation. You'll fumble in the red zone. You'll miss a kick. You'll do whatever it is that allows for the other team to garner hope, belief, and confidence, and they usually come back and beat you. So Mike doesn't win close games. Florida State doesn't win road games. They mismanage close situations. However, if they get out in front and they're able to stay within what they want to do and control the game, they may run away with it. They're a weird team that way.
They are. I think the mismanagement of the situations is more key than the one-score stuff, because I would say Florida State's 0-2 in one-score games. The Miami game counts as a one-score loss, but we all know what that fourth quarter was. And so does Pitt. You hit that home run shot to Danzy to get it to 3, and then it's an onside kick. So, while it's true, and if you recover the onside kick, you ain't going to give away that win, potentially, that you amass in the unlikeliest of fashions. I don't look at that as a game where you're battling and you're within a score the whole way. Virginia, on the other hand, is a really good example of Florida State having the lead, having the ball to start the second half and coming up empty. Those first drives of the second half have been killer for Florida State this season specifically. And here's where you could argue the other way and argue against me for Pitt. You did have the lead against Pitt coming out of the gate in the second half. You did have an opportunity at 21-21, or it might have been 24-21, to put the game out of reach. I think it was 24-21, to put the game out of reach. And you come away with a field goal attempt instead of what could have been a walk-in touchdown as an easy decision by the quarterback that he made the wrong decision. So there have been moments in the throes of the game, I'd say second quarter, third quarter, where you say, if you get a stop here, or, if you get a score here, I think we're done. I think Florida State's in a position where this other team is not coming back. If you started that second half against Virginia with a touchdown, you had the ball in your possession, and you go up 28-14,
you're going to win the game.
You're good. And who knows what happens to the trajectory of the season at that point. That's how fine the margins have been this year. And so on the one hand, I give Florida State credit for being able to get to a place where the margins are that fine, because they weren't last year. The margins were Grand Canyon-esque, but they have not been able to push themselves over the hump in those close situations, which is why we're sitting here at 5-5 and lamenting the fact that they haven't won a road game in nearly 2 calendar years.
It's weird. The conversation we're having probably mirrors to some extent the conversation they're having at NC State. NC State, folks, is responsible for Virginia's only loss. Second loss. Sorry. It's just they only have 2 losses. So, NC State beat Virginia. They upset Georgia Tech 48-36. That is the only loss for Georgia Tech. And, of course, you turn around and look at the rest of the season. If you're an NC State fan and you lost to Virginia Tech 23-21, you lost to Duke 45-33, you lost to Notre Dame, and you weren't competitive 36-7, you can kind of forgive that. But they have some unforgivable losses, much the way Florida State does. Some unique moments and nice wins, much the way Florida State does. No win is as good as Florida State's win over Alabama for NC State. But, hey, again, beating Georgia Tech and Virginia in this conference this year, it ain't nothing. It's in them.
Well, and those were 2 shootouts. They were comfortable playing score for score because Virginia's offense was going up and down the field. I remember we were looking at that deeply ahead of our game against the Cavaliers back in September. And the Georgia Tech game, Haynes King did everything he possibly could that night. He threw for 300. He ran for 100. And it didn't matter because NC State kept scoring and kept going down the field. And that's why if maybe you're taking it back in this first segment, like Tom really thinks a lot of CJ Bailey. Well, look, man, you don't have to go hunt for reverence for some of the stuff that guy has done this year. It's legit. He's a really good player, and when they get hot, man, that guy he makes those throws where you go, well, geez, who the hell are you, man? That's what they have in them. So they're comfortable playing score for score. Some of these other teams we played were not. I don't think Wake Forest was ready to go tit for tat with us. Certainly the way that game looked in the first half, no way. And then the Virginia Tech game that we just won, it's 10-7 at the break. I think both teams are kind of in neutral, at maybe second or third gear at best for little stretches. Florida State went to a different place. Virginia Tech couldn't go there. NC State can go there now. They can tonight.
They have to, Tom, because competent offenses have moved the ball very effectively against NC State across the year. And I just looked this up. I wanted to double check some numbers that I had for earlier in the show. NC State's defense ranks 116th in points per drive allowed. That's a pretty straightforward number. You don't have to contort yourself to understand what that means. They're 116th in that category in points per drive allowed, 2.88. You can't win a lot doing that to be 116th in the country. Basically, NC State fans watch the Wolfpack, and when the opposing team gets the ball, they're right to assume they're going to give up points. I mean, they're right to say what they do is a classic 3-7. How teams perform in the red zone decides whether or not NC State has to win a game 48-45 or whether or not NC State can rely on their offense to get them a couple touchdown lead and hang on for dear life. You would think, let's just put it this way, if I think I know something about tonight's game, and again, it's Florida State on the road, so the caveat always has to be made. But I think we're going to score tonight. I mean, Florida State's going to score 20-plus points tonight against NC State. If they don't, they didn't show up, because everybody that has shown up is lighting up that defense. It's a question of whether or not we can get stops.
Yeah, I would agree. And you're banged up in the secondary, specifically at corner. Your corner number 4 is going to be one of your 2 starters tonight.
Not
and Jerry Wilson's had an up and down year. Certainly in man, we don't love that matchup. You'd rather he be in zone. So, yeah, there are some deficiencies there. Offensively for Florida State, you're going to a different place too, I think, because it looks like Tommy Castellanos is not only healthy, but the most important part of what we saw in the second half was that he trusts that explosiveness in his leg. That's the battle there. He could have been healthy maybe in the first half. I mean, I'm sure he was, but he didn't trust it. There was this moment where you could see it click on for him in the third quarter last Saturday where he trusted his explosiveness, his elusiveness. He wasn't afraid in the open field to stay in the open field. All of those little things add up to potentially Florida State having a multifaceted offensive attack. The one thing I would say, just in watching a little bit of NC State defensively, it's hard to do. They do tend to give up more to the quarterback when the quarterback run is designed to have a little bit of contact. Like Haynes King is not exactly, they're not running speed option with Haynes King. They're running a lot between the tackles. They're adding numbers to the box so that they have more blockers. So it's an even matchup in terms of blockers versus guys who can bring the quarterback down. I don't know if there's a whole lot for Tommy in the way of design runs to the perimeter where he can get out of bounds. He's going to have to be willing to take some hits tonight. But if he is, he can average 6, 7, 8 yards a run, and that would be sustainable for Florida State.
I was this is going to come across as odd, and I don't mean it to sound this way because it would be so cynical. I was disappointed to see that NC State saw the return of a couple of very key offensive weapons. Hollywood Smothers and the defensive end Justin Jolly played in limited action last week. They're good players, and I checked the injury report coming into today. They are not listed even as questionable, and they are not listed as out. So it means that they're probably going to play a bigger role this week. It does change the dynamic of their offense. They are 2 very good players. So yeah, that's unfortunate. Without being cynical,
Yeah, well, no, it adds to their ground attack. So Smothers is a good player. They're built the same, both of the running backs. Smothers 5'11", 195. He's a sophomore. The guy that I liked a lot because I watched a lot of the Georgia Tech game is Jaden Scott. He's 5'10", 214. He's a freshman. Very impressive. And I get that Georgia Tech's defense isn't something that you want to write home about, especially the last couple of weeks you saw what BC just did to them. but they gave him the ball 24 times for just under 200 yards, Jaden Scott.
Yeah.
And I know Smothers is a little bit more of a star.
Yeah.
But they've got two dudes that are pretty impressive.
Yeah, the reason I don't like it is because it adds to the dynamicism. They can use two guys and not have to rely on the one guy to be carrying the load.
Yeah.
They want that balance. Most teams would love to have 2 to 3 backs. Florida State is in that position, where they don't just use one workhorse. That's kind of the modern approach to running back play.
There was even a play last week for Scott where it's a throw. It's a short throw around the line of scrimmage. God, you know who the offensive coordinator is? Your guy, Kurt Roper, the Roper Road to offensive execution.
Yeah, that's my man right there.
So they call a pass play. The game's already getting well out of hand against Miami to Scott, and he's catching it around the line of scrimmage. He's immediately smothered, not to use the other guy's name, and he still finds a way to power through 3 or 4 tacklers for 8 or 9 yards. It's the same kind of thing that we saw from Virginia the last time we played on a Friday night on the road, which was just 2 months ago. It's our second Friday roadie of the year. That type of thing where powering through contact for an extra 2 or 3 yards, they've got that at NC State. And that's where you're doing a little bit of a gut check for FSU. You're hitting the road. You're going to have to these last 2 games of the year. I've liked the buy-in. I thought they were locked in, ready to go for the Clemson game 2 weeks ago. But one of those little indicators of just how physical and invested they are tonight, I think is going to have to be point of contact. Does the play end there, or is NC State winning and surging forward for an extra 18 inches and 3 yards? We'll see. We'll see. That's a good indicator to see where Florida State is and what you can expect in terms of NC State's total offensive output.
If it's 18 feet, we're going to lose. I just want you to know that.
Yeah, 18 feet was hit. 18 feet was hit. Yeah.
If after the point of contact occurs, the runner gets an extra 18 feet, it's going to be a tough day at the office, ladies and gentlemen. That won't be a fun watch along on Warchant TV, although that is something that is happening tonight one way or the other. We will be there. I will be there in the first quarter. I look forward to joining Tom and Gene and anybody else that's on the broadcast for the start of this game. Tom, don't feel bad about in this opening segment of the pregame show before we go to break here in a moment. Don't feel bad about lauding the play of Bailey. He's been really, really good. I just wanted to check on a couple of other numbers. He is 3rd in the ACC currently with over 2,500 yards passing. And he has 19 touchdowns to just 9 interceptions. And given how often they have to rely on him to carry the day and how frequently they make him throw in order to survive a shootout, those 9 interceptions, that's not terrible. That's not terrible given the attempts. So, yeah, he's been good, man. He's like one of the 4 or 5 best quarterbacks in the league. Warchant Game Day continues.
Hey, this is Jay Green from Hotel Indigo Tallahassee. Can I stop and say thank you? Thank you for telling your guests to stay with us. Thank you for hosting your corporate meetings and social events in our rooftop meeting space. Thank you for hanging out with us on FSU football game days. Believe it or not, this sales guy isn't selling anything. I just want to say thank you. But if you've never seen our rooftop and I can ever help, give us a call, 850-755-9011. We are Hotel Indigo Tallahassee. Welcome to our neighborhood.
Introducing Harry's Plus. Oh, I've told you about Harry's razors before. Here's a little bit of shaving cream they sent me. Thank you. Sent due to Beeper. Also, Harry's got the travel pack razor. I got the Harry's in the back bathroom. I got the Harry's for my kids. What are we talking about? Well, they're high school kids. One of them's a senior. He needed a good razor. Harry spent 10 years developing their most advanced razor yet, an entire decade of R&D for the smoothest possible shave. And I can attest to that because I shave every morning with Harry's. And you won't find a better blade. And I've tried all of them. Refined blade technology. I could tell you about that. I could talk to you about the quality, the barbershop quality shave. Feels like almost like a straight razor. It's unbelievable. And their razors still cost less than Gillette Fusion, which is crazy. So you get this premium shave without this exorbitant price. Risk-free trial right now. If you don't love your shave, Harry's will make it right. No questions asked. Here's what you do, guys. For a limited time, Our listeners can get the Harry's Plus trial set for only $10 at harrys.com/warchant. Get you a Harry's razor. The set includes the all-new Harry's Plus razor, one refined 5-blade cartridge, a 2-ounce foaming shaving gel. Got that too. Yeah. And travel cover to protect your blades when you go on the road. Just head to harrys.com/warchant to claim this offer. And after you purchase, they'll ask where you heard about them. Please support this show, the Jeff Cameron Show. Support Warchant. Tell them that we sent you. That's right, harrys.com/warchant. Warchant game day rolls on. I mentioned it before the break. I want to go back to it to give you the official report. Injury reports matter, and they are out. NC State, A.J. Richardson is questionable. The linebacker, tight end Griffin Reamer, is questionable as well. Teague Anderson, an offensive lineman, is questionable. They've got a laundry list of guys out, and that includes 3 offensive linemen, another running back, a couple of corners. So we'll see. For Florida State, Omar Graham is questionable. Chase Laughlin again, Sam Singleton Jr., and Richie Leonard. Those are all of the players that are listed as questionable. Out, obviously, you know these names: Rawls, Diggs, Quindarius Jones, Ricky Knight III, Caleb Olali, who I've been wanting to see for ever and a day. Obviously, I don't know why they even need to list Ethan Pritchard. It almost feels demeaning to list him on an injury report. He got shot. And Donnie Aber is out as well. So that is the list of people that are out for Florida State. Comparatively speaking, every week when I check these injury lists, Florida State is pretty damn healthy. We don't have the injury bug to fall back on and make excuses for. They're pretty healthy. Now, they are banged up specifically in one place, and that is at defensive back. Yep. It's interesting. It seems to be a trend. Nothing Norvell can help, I'm sure, but when we get an injury to a position group, it spreads like wildfire. It becomes a disease. It's like when one of our receivers gets hurt, they're all injured. None of them can play. Or you lose a lineman, all of a sudden you lose 3 linemen, 4 linemen. It's really weird in his time here that he's been a little unlucky, a little snake bit, I will say, about a specific position group wearing a series of injuries all relatively around the same time. It's just that's tough sledding when you lose 4 of your 5 guys.
Yeah, that's where depth helps and cultivating depth, and I wish we did a little bit more of that. Now, this year, you really haven't had to see the effect of defensive back, specifically corner, and losing those guys until now. Because Rawls was available for the Pitt game, and I thought he played fantastically amongst a group of defenders that did not. Jabril Rawls was very good that day, and he was extremely physical. Here is the time where, okay, now that you're hurting at corner, will this sophomore, take advantage of that? And that's the number one thing I'm concerned about. Offensive line, I hope Richie Leonard can play. If he can't, they don't fall to pieces. They are what they are, which I believe has been a solid unit this year. I know that the number one thing that I'm not happy about, and a lot of people aren't happy about, is when we go tempo, we don't ever seem to win first down there as we try to go fast. But largely speaking, I think what we were hoping to see out of this veteran-laden transfer unit of offensive linemen, we got this year. They've been fine. And so they should be, especially in this matchup where NC State is giving up a bunch of yardage, both sides, both sectors, passing and running. I think they should be fine tonight. But, yeah, that thing that sticks out like a sore thumb, if this was a game with a lot of stakes on it, more stakes than just bowl eligibility, you'd say,
hey, Tommy, don't you poo-poo bowl eligibility, buddy.
I'm not demeaning the fact that we're fighting for bowl eligibility on November the 21st with NC State. We are both fighting for bowl eligibility on November the 21st tonight. But this would be a game if there were a ton of stakes, like an at-large bid of the college football playoff, a berth in Charlotte. I'd be pacing in my apartment today, thinking about our corners against their quarterback. It'll be the thing to watch. That's for sure when NC State's on offense.
It's interesting when you take the two teams, as we've mentioned several times, both fighting for bowl eligibility. So they both play in the ACC. They both have the 5 wins. And you would think that they're kind of close to the same team. But I don't think that they are. And this is what's frustrating. If you look at NC State in games in which they faced teams that had more talent than them, they've gotten blown out, like, really beaten down. The I think that, you go back and look at the scoring margin in the games in which they were facing a team with definitively more talent. They've gotten worked. Florida State, I believe, is the more talented team here. I'm going to make an argument that if both are operating at peak efficiency, Florida State could win this game comfortably. I think that's one of the reasons the number moved the way that it did. I think a lot of people view this as, okay, I've got these two teams, their records are the same, but they're not the same. Florida State has quality wins over Alabama, Wake Forest, and Virginia Tech by an average of 23 points in those wins. They've really been quite dominant when they've played teams that have, Alabama has more talent than Florida State. That was a great upset. But, Florida State's more talented than Wake. They're more talented than Virginia Tech, and they dominated those games. I think they're more talented than NC State. Now, the game is not played on paper, and it's not solely based on what the recruiting rankings would say about these two rosters. You do have to go out and play. But if Florida State plays well and NC State plays well, I think Florida State covers the spread. We go way over the number, and you end up winning a game 34-24 or something like that. The problem is the road woes are something that are unique to this team. If this game was a neutral site game, if this game was in Tallahassee, you would take Florida State to win big.
Yeah, what's frustrating about this team, among many things, is that I think they were dialed in and ready to go from the coaching perspective and the preparation perspective the last time they hit the road against Clemson. I mean, there's a lot of points you leave out there, a lot of points in that first half, probably 17 points that you don't come away with in the first half of that game against Clemson. You scored 10. They scored 24 for the game. You probably should have been in a dogfight in the upper 20s and lower 30s. Clemson, of course, could play comfortably in the second half as they realized that once the adversity set in and the balls hit the turf, we kind of cratered a little bit. And that's the thing that you need to watch for tonight, which is there a here we go again mentality that creeps in if something befalls you? The obvious thing would be a dropped pass or a turnover, something in a key situation like that. Randy Pittman wide open. Oh, no, they're going to have to punt now on fourth down. Does Florida State internalize there, and do they press? I thought Mike Norvell pressed on the road against Clemson, deciding to go for it on fourth down from his own 39. That play is brilliant. But he punted from midfield, and he decided to go for it on his own 39. The game was 8-0 at the time. Florida State was in a rhythm defensively. So it's not just about players pressing. I think you have an extension of the coaching staff going on there. You got a coach press, players press when the adversity strikes. It's going to happen. It does happen on the road. It's well documented that this is one of the toughest road environments to play on in the ACC, not just because of the bombs of urine, but also because those fans are right on top of the bench. And it creates this claustrophobic feeling. Talked to many players over the years who have said that. NC State's strange and weird, and you don't feel comfortable in that setting. Okay, Florida State has not dealt with not being comfortable very well at all this year. So will they respond to that, or do you see them turtle a little bit? I think that's the game within the game between the years for FSU tonight is if and when adversity strikes, how do they handle that? Hopefully it's differently than they have the last couple of years.
It's amazing to me that it consistently happens. It's interesting. Ira and I were talking on the report this week on the Warchant report, and he was saying that given the way this team responds to adversity or doesn't, that he believes on the road, if we win the coin toss, we should take the ball. NC State's defense has been so bad. Go down, put, your first 15 plays scripted. You ought to be able to go down the field, execute, get on top, get comfortable, get into this game feeling good about yourselves. It's so odd to talk about the fragility of Florida State football, but we have to bring it up time and again because of these road woes. What happens tonight if NC State gets the ball first and goes down the field and makes it look easy, and Bailey gets comfortable and he's slinging it around the lot, and the next thing you know, it's 7-0, and the pressure to retort is immediate because they are a good offensive team. There's more points where those came from. You've got to keep up. You've got to go tit for tat. We got to go back and forth here. This speaks to kind of a shootout mentality. Weather-wise, Tom, I have not done the double checking. I did not do my due diligence coming in here to do Warchant Game Day. The weather matters. Is it going to be clean, clear, cool? What do we got?
Yeah, so we're looking at temperatures. They're kind of chilly, but it's in the 50s.
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine then.
Precipitation, no, not much. 10% chance. So you might get a little sprinkle here or there. It's awfully humid for the temperature, and then the wind is not up either, which actually that would benefit Florida State, I would think, because the better quarterback is on the other sideline, but it's not going to be windy tonight either.
Well, the reason I asked is, again, you don't have any other factor that you have to weigh in this game. So to me, it's just you're going to have a perfect night to play football.
Yeah, and this is where, I might have said the 21-14, 28-14 thing a little bit wrong about the Virginia game. That's where the pick six would have come in at the end of the second quarter.
Yeah, if you get the pick six there, you're going to, yeah.
That's Jerry. But you're down 14-0 to Virginia. We all know about the turnover inside the 10-yard line. You do come all the way back to take the lead, but it's not ideal to start down 14-0 because essentially you need to play perfect the rest of the way. You spot them 2 scores. Stanford, they score first 3-0, you tie it, and then the next thing you know, they're up 13-3. So you're down 2 scores on the road at friggin' Stanford. Clemson, it's 18-0. So they really haven't played from in front at all on the road.
That's what I mean. Year. Yeah.
Briefly, you did when you were up 21-14 over Virginia. So in terms of 180 minutes plus the overtime, which is untimed, 180 minutes of 3 games, percentage time that you're playing with the lead on the road is minuscule, well under 10% of that.
Drives me nuts to think about because, again, I don't know what they're doing from a preparation standpoint, but it's not ideal. Whatever's happening for them to be buttoned up on the road and execute doesn't exist. They're always having to fight back and fight back and fight back. And, a lot of times you think they should be able to do it. They did. The Virginia game really frustrates me because you really got unlucky in some circumstances there, but you do battle all the way back. And I dare say if Jerry makes that pick, they may end up blowing Virginia out. Virginia doesn't want to hear any of that. And it doesn't matter now because we can all engage in what ifism and revisionist and all that. But I really think at that point, because you had scored 21 straight points, they're reeling. If that's a pick six, I think you call it a day.
Well, and you've got 3 different mentalities for the 3 road games that Florida State's been on. This is where obviously having guys up in the building helps. Ira, looking at warmups before Virginia, he said that Florida State had that false bravado by showing up, we're better than you energy before Virginia, which I didn't know about till the Monday after the game, but that is concerning. For the game against Stanford, they're already beaten, downtrodden. It's a late game. They're usually waking up at 5 o'clock Eastern. They're kicking off at 10:30 Eastern. I think they failed the week leading up to the game in not altering their plans. I don't care. I don't want to hear about class schedules in the afternoons. It's very difficult. We got class. Get the hell out of here. Yeah. You got a 10:30 game. Professors are going to have to be made to understand that this needs to be wired a little bit differently. And then for the Clemson game, I think instead of a team that had false bravado or a team that was downtrodden, I think you had a team that was dialed in, ready to go, but they didn't execute a few key plays, and then they were broken by that. So what's their mentality this time? Here's round 4 on the road. Is your mentality going to be markedly different? If they come out and looked as buttoned up as they did, prepared, I should say, as they did for Clemson, I think it bodes very well. Florida State's going to win this football game. They were prepared for that moment. They just didn't execute the damn plays, and then that ruined them.
I have a hard time believing they won't feel good as they step on the field. I understand that if you're listening to this and you're saying, Jeff, you gave the numbers at the beginning of the show. You've lost 5 of 6 to NC State. We haven't won a road game in 2 years. Why do you think they're going to go into Carter Finley and feel good about themselves? Because they're coming off a blowout win. And that's the healthiest Tommy's looked all year, save for the Alabama game. They've got to feel great. That injury report isn't a laundry list by any means. They're healthy. Their quarterback's back running the football. NC State's got a porous defense. You just won in blowout fashion. NC State's coming off a game in which they got blown out. I feel like you got a lot of things going for you here. You need to get this done. We'll come back, wrap it up momentarily. Warchant Game Day continues in a moment. Look at these hollow socks. See this? Hollow socks. These are the boot cut. This is the boot cut hollow sock right here. I will tell you, I took these out of the package because I'm going to wear them later. They're not the boot cut. These are alpaca, something to do with alpaca's performance socks. I've got these hollow socks that they sent me. Let me tell you something right now. I don't say yes to all the endorsements. I don't. But when Tom told me that Hollow Socks wanted to send me some socks, the boot cut, I got the compression sock, I've got the everyday active sock. I've got all the different kinds of socks. I'm not an expert on socks. All I asked Tom was are these fine folks that are sending me socks, hollow socks, are they comfortable? Are these good socks? And he said, well, I don't know, but they're going to send them to you and you get to try them. And if you don't want to talk about them, then we'll say no. But if you like the socks, then make sure you talk about them. So I'm talking about them because I love them. They're comfortable. They're great. I wore a pair on Monday to work out. That's the true test. When I work out, I got to have comfortable socks. You can't be out there sweating in uncomfortable socks or having them feel weird in your shoe. Not only they did not feel weird in my shoe, they felt great. They felt comfortable. They felt supportive. They felt like I should be working out in them. They're really, really good socks. And I think most of you watching this are like, all right, I like a good pair of socks. Socks are underrated. I mean, I know people who spend all kinds of money on socks, and at the end of the day, you really can't tell the difference. I could tell the difference with these socks. I like them. That's why I showed them off to the camera. I think you'll like them too. They've got socks for camping. They've got socks for hiking. They've got socks for hunting. Hunting's not my cup of tea, but if I were hunting, I'd like these big old thick long ones that go to your knee, right? Especially when it's cold outside. They've sold over 2 million pairs of socks. So a lot of people are just like me saying, I'm down with the socks. I like the everyday socks and the compression socks. Those are my two favorite. For a limited time, Hollow Socks is having a buy two, get two free sale. Head to hollowsocks.com today to check it out. Hollowsocks.com for up to 50% off your order. After your purchase, they'll ask you where you heard about them, and you can support the Jeff Cameron Show by saying, I heard about the Hollow Socks and the Jeff Cameron Show. Look at that. Do it. Go to hollowsocks.com. Get you some Hollow Socks. Get those alpacas. They're good. Wrapping it up on Warchant Game Day. One more of these to go, guys. This one and the game against the University of Florida. By the way, we oddly have to thank Tennessee and Florida for having that game where they do. This is a sorry slate of games this weekend. Normally, when we're playing a Friday game, I get excited about being able to sit back and watch the Saturday games unfold with no pressure building towards our game, but rather just the knowledge of whatever the result was. This is not a good slate. This is not a good set of games this weekend, guys, just so you know. So maybe this is the weekend I don't know. You go to the beach. You go do some yard work. You go to aboveandbeyondvr.com and book a place. I don't know. But this is the one.
Yeah, a lot of times this week is the dud. Usually it's second week of the season or penultimate week of the season because you're setting up for crescendos. But I'm trying to look conference specific slate. Boy, Syracuse, Notre Dame doing anything for you on NBC?
No.
So Arkansas at Texas is the best we got. That's the best we could do for the 3:30 window. Louisville SMU, I suppose, has some stakes to it in the noon window.
Kinda.
Well, for SMU, it certainly does because Miami needs a certain result. Maybe this is just you do your rooting guide, prevent Miami from getting to the ACC championship. What is necessary to make that happen? Pitt, Georgia Tech at 7. That game has immense implications for the ACC championship game. But you really have to look that hard. It's kind of like what our administration is doing, and we made it to the last segment. It's kind of like what our administration is doing to keep Mike. They are looking under every stone. They're looking everywhere, shaking out all the bushes like it's a game of Zelda. Ooh, it's a rupee. I'm shaking the bushes. It's a green one. I get a rupee. Which tells me that if you're working that hard, you already know what you want to do. So just do it. Do the damn thing.
Well, they can't, though, Tom, clearly, or they would have.
What is stopping them from saying he's back? You tell me. The easier answer is what's stopping them from firing him. We all know that. It's money.
Apparently, it's tonight's game. It all comes down to tonight's game, Tom. That's where we're at, buddy. What a big one. Here. What a big one.
6 years of data wasn't enough. That NC State game is the fulcrum game. This is
the one. It's all come down to this. Perhaps for both coaches, by the way, the announcing team should be prepared with that. Welcome into Carter Finley Stadium here in Raleigh, North Carolina, where tonight a coach's future will be decided on both sidelines.
Yeah, man. This would be like the broadcast at the Masters, right? And it's Friday, it's 4:00. And the broadcast is saying, all right, we've got him at 6 over par. Unfortunately, he's not going to make the weekend. And the on-course reporter is saying, I have him at 2 over par. In fact, this is a very big hole. Right? The fan base are the broadcast crew.
Yeah.
The administration is the on-course reporter. We've got a discrepancy. The graphic is saying 6 over par. He ain't making that cut. Cut's +1. And you got the guy on the course saying, well, this is a birdie putt. I have him at 2 over, guys.
Yeah.
If he makes this, I really think, and in fact, he might actually be 1 over par. He might not need to make this putt. It's like the targeting you do with yourself when you play as a kid and you're shooting threes. You're like, oh, there's actually 3 seconds to go.
Yeah, you change it up. Yeah.
What this is.
Do they win? What's your prediction? What do you got?
They do. This is a zigzag year. I think they're going to win 31. I think I said 31-20 something. We'll go with that.
Yeah. I think I took 38-34 NC State. Just a crazy, wild affair. And then I started to lean towards the under. I don't know. That's it. That's all for Warchant Game Day. Good job, Tom. Be good, everybody. Have a wonderful weekend. Don't forget tonight we'll have the watch along as well. Peace.